Okay, this is going to be our first sewing project that we're going to do together. And in order to make this, we're going to be doing some hand sewing. This here is the finished product. This is called a Tic Tac Toe board, or maybe an X's and O's. And so you can see that we've sewn in a grid to make the spaces for the X's and O's. And then we're going to use two different colors of buttons in which you can then play with a friend or a family member, and you can play your X's and O's and try and get 3 in a row to win the game. So in order to make this, we're going to start with 2 pieces of felt. You're going to have some different color options, but when you grab your piece of felt, you're going to notice that we have already put the grid on for you. So where you see a black line, that is where you are going to do a long running based stitch, okay? So where you see the black marker, you're going to do a stitch like you see here in green, okay? On the edges of this, you can see that we have little dots on here for you. That is where you're going to do your blanket stitch on the edge of it, and it's going to put your 2 pieces of felt together. So you pick one piece of felt that has the grid, you pick another piece of felt that is just plain, there's nothing on it, and it is going to go on the back side of that. You want to put these 2 pieces of felt together, and you want to line them up as well as you can. They're not perfect, they're not an exact match, but you do get pretty close. So in order to begin sewing, what you're going to need is 1, a piece of string. I've selected the color red. And then you're going to need a needle. We are using a yarn needle. That means that this needle is quite large. You're going to notice that the eye of the needle right here, which is where the thread goes through, is also large to account for the big piece of yarn. It is sharp on the end, so you're going to want to make sure that you keep that away from your fingers. And so to begin sewing, you're going to grab the very end of your string. Okay, that's the end. I guess I should back that up. To start, you're going to take one end of your thread. You are going to thread your needle. So I usually just kind of give it a squeeze and kind of move it back and forth. And then you can see that it is thread through. I'm going to pull that through, and I'm going to give myself a long tail. See how long that is, just so that it doesn't come off of the needle. I'm going to grab the other end of the string. So I have one end of the string used for the needle. The other end of the string, I need to put a knot in so that it stays in the felt fabric. To do that, I'm going to grab the end. You're going to place it on the needle, and using your pointer finger, you're just going to kind of hold that in place right up against your finger and the needle. You're going to take the long piece of thread, so you're holding this tight so it doesn't fall off, and you're going to go around 1, 2, 3 times. So you can see that I have it wrapped around there 3 times. I'm going to squeeze that together. Now using my thumb and my pointer finger, I'm going to pinch that, and I'm going to pull that knot all the way down my string or my yarn. And when I pull it tight, look what I have. I have a knot on the end. Okay, so we're going to take that knot now, and we're going to be able to use our thread, and it is not going to come through our fabric. So I'm going to pick a spot where I want to start on my grid. It doesn't matter where, somewhere along the edges. So I'm going to start right here. I want to make sure that I'm coming from the back side of just my first layer. I'm going to pull up, push that through, pull my thread all the way through. If you have a long piece of yarn like me, it might take a few pulls. And then when I pull it, you'll notice that it doesn't come through. The knot is on the back side of just my top layer of felt, and I'm going to hide it between so that I don't see that knot on the back side. It's kind of hidden in there. Now I'm going to go down, and I'm going to pull all the way through. Look, I caught my corners, so I need to make sure I don't have my corners. And then you're going to see that I've completed that first stitch. I've pulled it and it's tight. So now all I need to do is continue to go up and down following those lines. So I'm going to come up, I'm going to pull it all the way through, and then I'm going to go down, and I'm going to pull it all the way through, and I'm going to continue up all the way through. Whoops. Sometimes you'll get a little knot on the back, and you just have to pull that so that it doesn't come through, gets untangled. There we go. Pull that through all the way, and then you're going to go back down again. Okay, we're going to pull. When you're pulling that, you don't want it to be so tight that it's squishing your fabric like this. You just want it to be pulled through so that there's not a big loop here. You don't want it to look like that. You want it just to be pulled flush against your fabric. And you're going to continue going up and down throughout the whole grid. Okay? You're going to continue. Woo, that went flying on me. Hold on tight. And that's what it's going to look like. When you get to your blanket stitch, our yarn color is going to change. Okay, so now I'm ready to do my blanket stitch. I did my running based stitch with my red yarn. I'm going to use green for my edging for my blanket stitch. Again, I'm going to show you on the completed one. The blanket stitch is what we've done around the edge of our project. So in order to do that, we are going to do the same thing where we thread our needle with our yarn. I wrapped it around 3 times and I pulled it through so that I have my knot on the end of that. And I am again going to pin, I like to start in a corner. I'm going to go through just the top one. So again, I can hide that knot on the inside of my project. So I'm going to pull that through to begin. I've pulled that tight. Okay, it's hidden on the inside. I'm going to now put my yellow and black back together. And so that line that I went through, I'm going to go on the back side and I'm going to come up right kind of beside it, if not in the same hole that I went down. So I'm going to come up right beside where I was. I'm going to pull that through. Again, make sure that your yarn is not knotting on you. Pull that through. Okay, and you don't want it too tight. You can see I've pulled mine too tight, so I'm just going to give it a little bit of a release there. So it looks like that. Okay, now for this first stitch, now that you've gone through, you're going to go through that little loop that you have. See it like that, and then you're going to come up the next one. So try and get as close to those little dots that you can. You're coming up. When you have a little bit of a loop, you're going to go through the loop. Okay, so I'm going from left to right and I pull that down. So you can see how it's giving me that finished edge. Now I'm going to go up, find my dot, pull it through. When I get a little bit of a loop, that's when I'm going from left to right, pulling it through and tightening it. And you can see how we're getting that nice finished blanket stitch on the edge, which will bring together our 2 different colors of felt, and it'll bring them together so that they can't come apart. I'm going to show you one more time how I came up. I went from left to right and I pulled that tight. Okay, you're going to continue all the way around the edge until you come back to where you started.